There comes a moment in every man's journey when he must decide. A crossroads where paths diverge. A choice that will define not just who he becomes, but what impact he leaves on this world. Will he embrace his full strength, his complete power, his total capability? Or will he dim himself, reduce himself, make himself small enough to avoid disturbing a world increasingly uncomfortable with masculine force? This isn't a theoretical question, not some abstract philosophical puzzle for comfortable debate. This is the central decision that determines whether a man will walk through this world as a lion or a ghost. Look around you, truly look. What do you see? Legions of men haunting their own existence, moving through their days with hunched shoulders and downcast eyes, apologizing with their very posture for occupying space, for having ambitions, for possessing the ancient power coded into their very DNA. These men exist in a perpetual state of inner conflict, the tension between what burns within them and what the world tells them is acceptable, between the primal force they contain and the endless messages insisting this force is dangerous, toxic, unnecessary in modern times. And from this tension emerges modern man's most devastating affliction, the plague of apology. The constant need to justify, to explain away, to make palatable what should never require permission or explanation. Strength, power, drive, ambition, protection, provision, creation, conquest. These aren't toxic accidents of outdated biology. They aren't evolutionary mistakes awaiting correction. They aren't problems to be solved or disorders to be treated. They are the essential engines of masculine contribution. The core furnaces that, when properly directed, build civilizations, protect the vulnerable, create unprecedented prosperity, and drive humanity forward through obstacles that would otherwise prove insurmountable. Yet today's man finds himself caught in an impossible bind. The very qualities that make his most significant contributions possible are also those most often labeled problematic. The same strength that can protect can also destroy. The same ambition that can build can also dominate. The same drive that can achieve can also overwhelm. And so modern man faces a devastating choice: diminish these qualities to avoid criticism, or express them and be condemned for the very nature he was born to embody. Is it any wonder so many choose reduction over rejection, voluntary weakness over vilification, the slow death of self-suppression over the immediate execution of social condemnation? But there is another way, a path walked by the few who understand that true masculinity isn't the problem but the solution. That properly channeled masculine power doesn't damage the world but heals it. That uncompromised strength directed toward worthy purpose doesn't threaten civilization but preserves it. This path begins with a fundamental shift, a tectonic realignment that transforms everything that follows. Stop apologizing for your nature. This doesn't mean embracing every impulse without discrimination. Doesn't mean acting without consideration for impact. Doesn't mean expressing power without purpose or restraint. It means recognizing that the core qualities of masculine nature aren't accidents to be corrected, but assets to be channeled. Not defects to be treated, but gifts to be developed. Not threats to be contained, but forces to be directed. Strength isn't toxic. Misused strength is toxic. Power isn't dangerous. Undirected power is dangerous. Ambition isn't harmful. Unchecked ambition is harmful. drive isn't destructive. Uncontrolled drive is destructive. The solution isn't less masculine energy, but better directed masculine energy. Not weaker men, but stronger men with clearer purpose. Not the elimination of male power, but the proper application of male power toward ends that serve rather than subjugate. This unapologetic strength begins with radical self-acceptance, with the deep soul-level recognition that you were built this way for reasons beyond social fashion or cultural trend. That the fire within you serves purposes larger than contemporary comfort. That the qualities most criticized today are often those most necessary for challenges just beyond the horizon. Throughout human history, the same pattern repeats with devastating reliability. Societies that succeed grow comfortable. Comfort creates safety. Safety reduces the apparent need for traditional masculine virtues. These virtues become viewed as vestigial, unnecessary, even problematic in a world where danger seems distant and protection appears automatic. Then reality reasserts itself. The cycle turns. The veneer of permanent safety cracks to reveal the unchanging truth beneath. That danger never disappeared, but merely waited. That protection isn't automatic, but must be actively provided. That the very qualities dismissed as outdated suddenly become recognized as essential when comfort crumbles and safety evaporates. Look through human history without ideological filters, without political bias, without the distortion of wishful thinking. What becomes immediately apparent? Catastrophe is the norm, not the exception. Danger is the default, not the deviation. Threat is the constant, not the aberration. The relative safety and comfort of modern Western existence isn't humanity's natural state. It's a rare anomaly created and maintained through tremendous sacrifice, constant vigilance, and the very masculine qualities now deemed problematic by those who benefit most from the security these qualities provide. This isn't theoretical. Look at what happens when disaster strikes, when systems fail, when the thin veneer of comfortable civilization peels back to reveal the raw reality beneath. Who runs toward the danger when others flee from it? Who holds the line when chaos threatens order? Who rebuilds what nature or malevolence destroys? In those moments, the same masculine qualities criticized in comfortable times become recognized as essential. The strength that seemed unnecessary becomes vital. The protective instinct that appeared outdated becomes crucial. The willingness to confront danger that looked primitive becomes civilization's last and best defense. The unapologetically strong man understands this larger context, recognizes that his nature serves purposes that transcend contemporary comfort, acknowledges that what others may criticize in safer moments may prove essential when safety evaporates. This understanding doesn't make him arrogant, doesn't fill him with contempt for those who fail to see what he perceives, doesn't create entitled expectation of praise or recognition. It simply allows him to stand in his full strength without internal conflict, to embrace his nature without constant self-criticism, to express his power without perpetual apology, because he knows something others have forgotten, that properly directed masculine strength isn't the enemy of a good society, but its foundation. Not the threat to civilization, but its bulwark. Not what endangers the vulnerable, but what ultimately protects them when words and wishes prove insufficient against harder realities. This brings us to the second essential element of unapologetic strength: purposeful direction. Masculine energy without clear purpose becomes destructive. Male power without worthy direction becomes dangerous. Strength without meaningful application becomes toxic to self and others. The unapologetically strong man doesn't just embrace his nature. He channels it, directs it, applies it toward ends larger than momentary impulse or personal gratification. This direction doesn't come from external validation or social approval. It emerges from something deeper, something the ancient traditions understood clearly but modern discourse has largely forgotten. The masculine journey from boy to man isn't just physical maturation, but spiritual transformation. In traditional cultures across vastly different geographies and eras, this journey followed remarkably similar patterns. The boy, operating from impulse and immediate desire, was systematically transformed through initiation, challenge, and guided development into the man, operating from principle and transcendent purpose. This transformation doesn't happen automatically, doesn't unfold through passive maturation, doesn't occur simply because years pass and bodies grow. It requires intentional development, conscious challenge, direct confrontation with the shadow aspects of masculine nature that, left unintegrated, become truly toxic rather than merely labeled as such. Modern society has largely abandoned these transformational processes, has discarded the initiations that once converted biological males into psychological men, has rejected the challenges that forged impulse into character and desire into purpose. The result surrounds us. Biological men who never completed the psychological journey to manhood, who possess adult bodies with adolescent drives, who carry man's strength without man's restraint, who have male power without male purpose. From this incomplete development emerges much of what gets labeled toxic masculinity today. Not because masculinity itself is toxic, but because undeveloped, untransformed, undirected masculine energy often expresses in harmful ways. The solution isn't eliminating masculine energy, but developing it fully, not suppressing male nature, but completing its transformation, not condemning the raw expression of masculine power, but channeling it toward mature expression. The unapologetically strong man recognizes this distinction clearly, understands that embracing his strength requires simultaneous commitment to its proper direction, that claiming his power necessitates clarity about its purpose, that standing in his full masculine nature demands integration of its shadow aspects, rather than their mindless expression or complete denial. This commitment to purposeful direction doesn't limit his strength but magnifies it, doesn't reduce his impact but amplifies it, doesn't diminish his power but focuses it like a laser rather than dispersing it like a flood. Because strength without direction is merely force, power without purpose is simply destruction waiting to happen. Drive without destination is movement without meaning. The third essential element of unapologetic strength follows naturally from the first two: uncompromising excellence. When a man stops apologizing for his nature and commits to its purposeful direction, something remarkable emerges: the relentless pursuit of mastery in his chosen domains. Not from external pressure, not from social comparison, not from insecure compensation, but from the natural expression of directed masculine energy, from the inherent drive toward impact that emerges when internal conflict dissolves and purpose clarifies. The unapologetically strong man doesn't just accept challenges, he actively seeks them. Doesn't just face tests, he creates them. Doesn't just endure difficulty. He recognizes it as the necessary forge for capabilities impossible to develop in comfort. This pursuit isn't about proving worth to others. It's about manifesting the fullness of what exists within. Not demonstrating value to external judges, but expressing capacity that demands emergence. When masculine energy flows without the friction of constant self-doubt and apologetic hesitation, it naturally drives toward mastery, toward excellence, toward the fullest expression of capability in whatever domains a man directs his focus. This uncompromising commitment to excellence becomes its own answer to critics of masculine nature. Not through argument, but through demonstration. Not through explanation, but through impact. Not through justification, but through undeniable results that benefit far more than they cost. The fourth element builds on all that preceded: protective empowerment. The mature masculine doesn't use strength to dominate, but to elevate. Doesn't apply power to control, but to create conditions where others can develop their own power. Doesn't direct drive toward self-aggrandizement, but toward construction of environments where the vulnerable become strong and the weak become capable. This orientation transforms how masculine energy expresses in relationship with others. The unapologetically strong man doesn't seek to make others dependent on his strength, but capable of developing their own. Doesn't offer protection that creates perpetual vulnerability, but protection that fosters growing resilience. This isn't weakness masquerading as enlightenment. It's strength directed toward its highest purpose, the creation of more strength, the generation of expanded capability, the development of greater resilience in ever-widening circles of influence. The fifth element completes the structure of unapologetic strength: tribal leadership. The fully developed masculine doesn't exist in isolation, doesn't function as lone force disconnected from community, doesn't operate a separated power without reference to collective need. The unapologetically strong man recognizes his role within the larger tribal structure, understands that his strength exists not solely for individual expression, but for group benefit, acknowledges that his power reaches its highest form not in solitary achievement, but in collective elevation. This tribal orientation doesn't mean subordinating individual excellence to group mediocrity, doesn't require sacrificing personal capability on the altar of collective comfort, doesn't demand reduction of strength to avoid highlighting others' weakness. It means directing individual excellence toward tribal benefit, applying personal capability toward collective elevation, using unique strength to address shared challenges that would otherwise overwhelm. The unapologetically strong man leads not from entitled expectation of deference, but from demonstrated capacity to solve problems others cannot solve, face challenges others cannot face, and create opportunities others cannot create. His leadership isn't claimed through declaration, but earned through impact. Not granted by authority, but recognized through effectiveness. Not maintained through control, but sustained through consistent contribution. This tribal leadership represents the mature masculine in its fullest expression, not the boy's impulsive dominance or the adolescent's need for constant validation, but the man's measured application of strength toward collective benefit and purposeful direction of power toward shared advancement. Together, these five elements form the architecture of unapologetic strength: radical self-acceptance of masculine nature, purposeful direction of masculine energy, uncompromising excellence in chosen domains, protective empowerment rather than domination, tribal leadership through demonstrated contribution. This architecture doesn't emerge automatically, doesn't develop through passive maturation, doesn't unfold without conscious intention and disciplined effort. It must be built, constructed, created through deliberate commitment to the development of strengths our current culture often labels problematic even as it quietly depends on them. This construction begins with a fundamental choice: to stop apologizing for the nature written into your very DNA, to cease the endless self-criticism for possessing qualities as old as humanity itself, to end the perpetual self-doubt about whether your natural strengths represent problems requiring correction rather than assets awaiting proper direction. This choice isn't made once and completed. It's made daily, hourly, in countless small moments when the pressure to diminish yourself, to reduce your impact, to apologize for your ambition, to justify your drive presents itself in both subtle and obvious forms. Each time you choose unapologetic expression of properly directed strength over apologetic reduction of your natural power, something shifts, not just within you, but in the world you influence. Not just in your internal experience, but in the external reality you help create. Because here's what most fail to understand about masculine energy. It doesn't exist solely for the man who embodies it. It exists as essential force for addressing challenges larger than any individual, for solving problems that require directed strength rather than diffuse comfort, for creating realities that demand sustained drive rather than sporadic enthusiasm. When men apologize for this energy, when they diminish this strength, when they reduce this power to avoid criticism or rejection, they don't just damage themselves. They deprive their families, communities, and civilization itself of essential force for addressing challenges that will arrive, whether we're prepared for them or not. This doesn't mean blind celebration of every male impulse or unrestrained expression of every masculine drive. That approach creates precisely the toxicity rightly criticized by those concerned about harmful expressions of male energy. It means developing these impulses into mature capability, transforming these drives into directed power, converting raw masculine energy into the refined force that has always been essential for human flourishing and always will be, regardless of how unfashionable this acknowledgement might become in temporarily comfortable times. The unapologetically strong man doesn't ignore legitimate criticism of immature masculine expression. He recognizes immature expression as precisely that: immature, undeveloped, untransformed masculine energy that requires further development rather than complete rejection. He doesn't defensively celebrate toxic behavior as somehow authentic masculinity. He recognizes toxic behavior as failed masculinity, as masculine potential arrested in development, as male energy never properly transformed from its raw state into its mature expression. This distinction changes everything. It shifts the entire frame from masculine energy is the problem to undeveloped masculine energy is the problem. From male strength must be reduced to male strength must be properly directed. From masculine power is dangerous to masculine power without purpose and restraint is dangerous. This reframing doesn't just liberate men from the impossible bind of contemporary gender discourse. It creates path forward that benefits everyone, regardless of gender or orientation. Men fully embracing their strength while committing to its proper development and direction. Women and children protected by mature masculine power rather than endangered by its immature expression. Communities strengthened by directed male drive rather than damaged by its undirected manifestation. Civilization itself buttressed by the very qualities required for its continued existence rather than undermined by their absence when most needed. This isn't about returning to some imagined past where men dominated without question or accountability. That approach represents its own form of arrested development, its own expression of immature masculine energy never properly transformed. This is about moving forward into a future where masculine strength isn't apologized for but fully developed, where male power isn't demonized but properly directed, where masculine energy isn't suppressed but channeled toward its highest expression and most essential contribution. The unapologetically strong man doesn't claim superiority over others, doesn't demand deference based on gender, doesn't expect reduced standards or special treatment. He simply refuses to accept the premise that his fundamental nature represents inherent problem requiring constant apology. He rejects the notion that his natural strengths constitute threats requiring perpetual restraint rather than assets requiring proper direction. He declines participation in the increasingly common ritual of male self-flagellation for possessing qualities as ancient as humanity itself. Instead, he commits to the development of these qualities into their mature expression, to the transformation of raw masculine energy into directed masculine power, to the conversion of natural male strength into purposeful male contribution. This commitment doesn't occur in opposition to women, children, or society itself. It unfolds in service to them, not through diminishment of masculine nature, but through its full development. Not by becoming less masculine, but by becoming more fully and maturely masculine. Because ultimately, the properly developed masculine doesn't threaten others. It protects them, doesn't limit others. It creates space for their flourishing. Doesn't reduce others. It elevates them through its directed strength and purposeful power. This truth remains regardless of how unfashionable its acknowledgement becomes in temporarily comfortable times. Remains essential regardless of how earnestly some might wish for a world where protection requires no protectors, where security demands no guardians, where prosperity generates without the directed drive that has always been necessary for its creation. The unapologetically strong man recognizes this larger context, understands his place within it, accepts the responsibility that comes with the strengths he embodies. He doesn't expect praise for this acceptance, doesn't demand recognition for this understanding, doesn't require constant validation for the conscious choice to embrace rather than apologize for his nature. He simply stands in his full strength, directs his complete energy, applies his total capability toward ends worthy of the power he possesses and the impact it can generate when properly channeled. In a world increasingly uncomfortable with masculine force, this unapologetic strength becomes revolutionary, not through violent uprising but through quiet certainty, not through domineering control but through unshakable presence. Not through regressive return to outdated expressions, but through progressive development toward highest manifestation. The revolution begins not with change in social policy, or cultural messaging, but with change in individual choice. With the decision by man after man to stop apologizing for qualities essential for addressing challenges that care nothing for our temporary comfort or current fashion. With the commitment to develop these qualities to their highest expression rather than suppress them to their lowest impact. With the determination to channel masculine energy toward its most constructive application, rather than constantly constraining it to avoid its destructive potential. This revolution doesn't happen through mass movements or public demonstrations. It unfolds through daily choices and countless small moments when the pressure to diminish, to reduce, to apologize presents itself. Each time a man chooses unapologetic strength over apologetic weakness, something shifts. Each time he embraces his nature while committing to its proper direction, something changes. Each time he refuses the false choice between toxic expression or complete suppression in favor of the true path of development and transformation, something evolves. Not just within him, but in the world he influences. Not just in his internal experience, but in the external reality he helps create. Because ultimately, the world doesn't need weaker men. It needs stronger men with clearer purpose. Doesn't need less masculine energy, but better directed masculine energy. Doesn't need male power eliminated, but male power properly applied. The unapologetically strong man becomes living demonstration of this truth. Not through argument, but through impact. Not through explanation, but through example. Not through justification, but through the undeniable evidence of what properly directed masculine strength actually creates when unleashed without apology and applied without hesitation toward worthy ends. This demonstration doesn't require universal approval, doesn't demand uniform appreciation, doesn't expect consistent recognition. It requires only the courage to stand fully in your strength when others suggest you should diminish it. The conviction to direct your energy toward worthy purpose when others question whether it should exist at all. The commitment to develop your natural power to its highest expression when others insist it represents inherent problem rather than essential solution. This courage, this conviction, this commitment forms the foundation of unapologetic strength, of masculine power embraced without constant self-criticism or perpetual justification, of male energy directed toward its highest application rather than constrained to its lowest expression. The choice stands before you now, as it has always stood before men across time, cultures, and circumstances. Will you apologize for your nature, or will you develop it to its highest expression? Will you perpetually justify your strength, or will you direct it toward worthy purpose? Will you diminish your impact to avoid criticism, or will you magnify it to create necessary change? The world awaits your answer, not in words, but in action, not in explanation, but in impact, not in justification, but in the undeniable evidence of what you create when you stand, without apology, in the full strength you were born to embody and develop.